Good evening and welcome to Lodi in the World. I sit down with local leaders and influential individuals and talk about our Lodi Valley and how it reflects the world. Tonight, I am talking with Dr. Nicholas Karls, who is the Director of Curriculum for the Lodi School District. He has just started this year, but he is a Lodi native and is coming back home. Yeah. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk to the community.
So first of all, what does your job entail? Let's just get that off the table right away.
Yeah, absolutely. When you hear a director of curriculum, what does that mean, right? And really, there's a few different things that I'm involved with: curriculum, instruction, assessment, and so there are a number of things that fall under the umbrella of that title. Curriculum would be everything from the instructional materials that we utilize in the classroom. But I also help oversee and work with educators around instructional best practices. So it's not just the materials that we're using, but then how do we deliver instruction to our students? I am the district assessment coordinator, so I help oversee our local assessment system that we utilize to help identify how our students are doing in relation to those instructional objectives that we have identified.
No, I'm going to stop you right there for a
absolutely.
second. Now, is that, when we talk about assessments, is that standardized testing or is that a more broad and holistic approach to things?
Yeah, absolutely. In both. I would say it falls under both. So there are certain requirements from the Department of Public Instruction where we have some standardized tests that we have to administrate to our students. And with that, there's a variety of tasks that come with that to ensure that we are following all of the procedures that the Department of Public Instruction has set forth. So I help oversee a lot of that. But locally, we also really take a lot of value in our own district assessment structure, where we do have some standardized type assessments that we give kind of universally, that 30,000-foot view to tell us how our students doing within a variety of curricular areas. But also it's evidence gathering techniques when we're in the classroom. And so whether it be quantitative, so the teacher asking or the teacher giving the students something that they fill out, and we're looking at that data and how it comes back as a whole class they're doing, or just the conversations that we have with students, right? And really trying to identify, do they know and are they able to do the things that we've identified? And so there's a lot of value in education and identifying when you're looking at a class, what things do students already have down pat, right? And what things do we have to kind of dive a little deeper on, and being able to differentiate that for student groups and really move away from that kind of historical approach of, okay, I'm the teacher, I'm the facilitator, everybody's going to get the same thing every day, right, in the same way, and being able to shift that is reliant on some of those evidence gathering techniques that we go about in the classroom.
So now when you're talking about assessing students and that feedback, you're going from students who have special needs or need extra help learning up to those who are in the we used to call gifted and talented. I don't know what it's called now.
Advanced learners.
Advanced learners.
Yeah,
again, where you've got that breadth. How do you deal with? Okay, we've got to pay attention to this group and this group and this group and this group and this group, and they all have different needs. Even if it's just, some people visually learn, some people learn from hearing, some people learn from doing. You can kick him off.
It's okay. A little partner next to me here. So how do we go about that?
Yeah. I mean, that's a complex thing to deal with. How do you deal with it?
It is a complex thing to deal with, and it's a tremendous opportunity, really. When we think about students with disabilities or students who maybe fall into that advanced learner category, the one thing we have to really think about first is our students are coming with a variety of different backgrounds and what they've been exposed to. So we have to first kind of pump the brakes and say, well, just because you've been identified as an advanced learner, or just because you're a student with a disability and I'm presenting this content to you, right? I can't automatically assume that this group doesn't already come in with some background knowledge in that, or that, this group already has everything. And so that's, I think, where the evidence gathering techniques come in, and for teachers to have those conversations with students, or teachers to go around some sort of pre-assessments, they can do some of that differentiation. It is tricky, but it's definitely doable. And when it's done right, it's very worthwhile, because the student experience starts to become something where I'm not necessarily always sitting in class and getting something that I already know, right? I'm taking it and I'm scaffolding up and I'm building upon the things that I already know. And in every content area, that can look a little bit different, right? It's just a kind of roundabout.
When I think about how people learn, I had a good friend in high school who did not do well in school. He's now working in an R&D department, developing mechanical devices that go into safety equipment, that go into nuclear submarines. I know there are kids out there who have difficulty learning, but they got it.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got, so you're not necessarily talking about disabilities, but just how kids learn.
That's a really interesting point. If I could just maybe kind of bridge on, it's probably something we would have gotten to later. School may look a little different, feel a little different than it did when I went to school or when you went to school. And if you think about, or at least probably where we're trying to get to with school right now, when we're thinking about 21st century skills and how do we help students be ready for college, career, and life, in this era. And when we think about that, and I'll just reflect on my own experience, when I was in school, I probably spent the majority of my time engaged in activities that were memorization, recall, right? And that's fine. And we need to still focus on those things. But I would say probably 90% of my time was focused on that, regurgitating information that was being fed to me, right? So what's shifted? What's been the change? The world is very different now.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So the information that students now have at their fingertips compared to when I went to school, when you went to school, in the world of today is very different. And so when we think about the bulk of the time that we spend in school, recall, memorization, things like that, they are very important. But how do we take those opportunities for students in school and how do we build off of them so that a good chunk of the time we're also spending time with more of the skills that maybe are going to be relevant today, things like collaboration with peers, right? Analyzing, when you're analyzing different information that you're going to get, creating, things like that. Those are more of the 21st century skills, the bulk of the time that we want to spend in school to prepare our students for what they're going to have to be able to do out in the workforce or in life. So that's the exciting part of my job, is working with teachers to say, okay, how do we take that really important concepts that we've historically had, and how do we continue to build off that and kind of scaffold up for our students? And it gets fun.
All right, I'm going to take you down a little rabbit hole here. As someone who has taught a lot and dealt with kids in real world situations. So I worked out at the Piggly Wiggly for a while and dealing with some of the kids there and seeing the difference between the really good ones and the not so good ones. Maybe it's just that I'm getting old, but it seemed to me that there used to be a lot more emphasis on critical thinking skills. And when I was in China, I was talking to people about educating their children. China teaches the answer. It is all memorization. Okay, this is the answer. It is always this answer, no matter what. And I said that, well, when I was growing up, we were taught to figure out the question. Okay, we're not so worried in the answer. We're worried about what is the question, how do we get to an answer. That sounds like kind of what you're talking about in analyzing situations and stuff like that. How much critical thinking skill do you want to teach, and how much do you think you successfully can?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance, and I think it's really it's a pendulum, right? You need to start with one to kind of build up to the other, but there has to be a balance, and we have to be bringing in those critical thinking skills, and really when you look at it, if I'm a student, you can probably all relate to this. If I'm a student and I walk into class every day and I'm presented with some material, and then I'm presented with a worksheet that has some bubble responses, for example, and that's my student experience every day, I would argue that we are not preparing our students for career, college, and life readiness. But if I'm a student and my experience the bulk of the time is coming in, analyzing a set of information collaboratively with peers, for example, or my experience is taking information that was delivered by the teacher and then turning that into an opportunity to create something, to develop something. That's an experience that I think is more relatable to what they're going to have in life today. So,
You've said a phrase a couple of times now: career, college, and life.
yeah.
It sounds like a buzzword. Kind of. What does
Appreciate that. Yeah, go ahead.
What do you mean by career, college, and life?
Well, I think there's a time in education where it was we want to help all students become college ready. We want them to become college ready, and that's our focus. And we need to get them ready for what they're going to experience within an institute of higher education. And I think there was a point a little while back where we kind of took a step back and said, okay, is that necessarily the path for all of our students?
Okay.
Right? For some of our students, and I'm sure you can think of this, some of your classmates, right?
Yeah.
Who went on and went on to institutes of higher education, and that was their path, and very successful potentially through that path. But you also probably can reflect on, and I certainly can in my childhood, individuals who came out of school and went directly into the workforce, right? And found a lot of success there, and really looking at it more broadly and saying, not just as an institution, Lodi School District, how are we only focused on helping students be ready for accessing institutes of higher education? That is important, but in a more broad focus for life, for the workforce, if that's what they choose to go right into out of high school. But then also, with the life component of just being active, contributing members of the community, and that's something that we want to focus on as well.
That's something that's always been a big thing here.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of the teachers from when I was going to school, and especially some of the coaches. Jack Reinwand was amazing in saying, yeah, you're here to wrestle, but you're going out and you're helping the community.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it was the football team or the wrestling team that would pick up the cement benches around town, and you'd see those guys out there helping. And so I'm glad to hear that that's still a focus.
Yeah. Well, and I can relate to that as well. Jack was Mr. Reinwand was one of my coaches as well. And I can vividly remember every season that there was some sort of service learning opportunity that we were involved in, and those are things I reflect fondly on. Yeah.
All right. So you're in here. You've been in here for a whole a couple of days now. What are some of the things that you're looking at going, all right, this isn't what I expected? Outside of the whole COVID thing.
COVID was what I was about to go to. Yeah.
Yeah. Outside of that, what are some of the things you go, oh, that's not what I was expecting, either in a good or a challenging way?
Mm-hmm.
And how are you dealing with it? How are you, integrating?
Right. Absolutely. So right now, in my first few months within the Lodi School District, I think this is something that I even laid out for Mr. Breinig and the board as part of my entry plan, was this first chunk of time in the district is really just listening, learning, analyzing where we're at, going through some of the foundational components that are associated with my role and saying, one, do we have these things in place? And two, if not, how do we continue? How do we work towards getting some of these pieces in place? And I've just been very impressed with the Lodi School District. Just a wonderful district, some wonderful opportunities for students already that I've noticed, and I'm sure I'm going to find more as I continue to get the opportunity to engage with our educators. And that's really important for me to continue to find time to connect with them. I haven't had as much time right now to connect with students as I would like. In the past, I've served in a similar role, and typically what I would do is I would start every morning in one of our schools, and I would connect with students, and I'd be able to connect with educators, and that really gave me a good lens into kind of the day-to-day operations within each building. So right now, some of that's on hold, but I would say with some of the bigger pieces, I've seen some things that have really excited me that we've had in place. I came into the Lodi School District, and the board and they had set up a system where we have, regardless of content area, we have teacher leaders who are helping and in place at every level to be on the ready to have deeper conversations about vertical alignment within content areas. So the structures have been in place, and I'm excited myself to come in and help provide some leadership for an opportunity for those individuals to come together and have deeper conversations. And so with that, I see a positive that there was the vision and the forward thinking to put some of those leadership positions in place. But I also see opportunity right now where I can come in and help us have some deeper conversations. So an example would be, and tomorrow we have this going on, we have K-12 curricular teams. So if I'm a teacher leader at the primary school or the elementary school or the middle school or the high school around math, we're going to come together and we're going to talk about what does math instruction look like at the high school level, the middle school, the elementary, and the primary. And not just individually, what does it look like at each of our levels, but then also vertically, how does that look? And what we're doing in one level is that are we building something that the next level can build upon, et cetera, et cetera. And then having conversations like when a student leaves Lodi High School, what are those key things that are incredibly important that we hold near and dear here in Lodi for our students to know and be able to do in math, and how are we all contributing towards that for when they leave our system? There's a lot of you can say whatever you want about standards. There's a lot of standards out there, right? Whether you're talking about the Common Core state standards, or in Wisconsin, for example, we have the Wisconsin Model Academic Standards that have been created by educators, right, through some coordination with the Department of Public Instruction. At the end of the day, there's a lot of standards out there.
So how much flexibility is there in those standards?
Perfect segue kind of into my next piece.
Okay.
Yeah. There has to be some flexibility. At the end of the day, what happens is without those coordinated conversations in educational systems, there are choices that are being made. Teachers go into their classroom, they shut their doors, and ultimately, just because of the amount of time you have in the school day, you have to make some decisions of what are you prioritizing, right? And the thing about educational systems is we need to create opportunities for teachers to come together and have these collaborative conversations to say, okay, not only in the same grade level, what are those common standards or areas of focus that we're going to make sure every student knows and is able to do, but vertically throughout our entire system, what does that look like? Because ultimately, like I said, teachers are going to make choices, and absent of those conversations, the student experience could look very different from classroom to classroom, or by the time they sequence all the way through the grade levels. So one of my roles is to come in and support our teachers, leaders, give them opportunities to come together collaboratively and have those conversations. And, I'll be the first to say this. I'm not an expert, in every content area that is under my umbrella, but we have amazing teacher leaders that are, and they just need opportunities to come together, with some parameters and have those conversations so that we can have that kind of coordinated approach. Now, I say that with caution. That doesn't mean that it hasn't already been going on. Many departments are doing a great job with that. But as the world changes, and we talked about before, right? How do we continue to help our students be career, college, and life ready? We need to constantly be revisiting those. And as a system, aligning so that we can have our students ready for when they leave Lodi High School.
Okay, so teacher has their class. They've got their standards that they're working for. They've talked to the teachers vertically. They're saying across the same group.
Well, like maybe across the same grade level. That's probably that's the foundational spot, right? We want to make sure there's coherence within a grade level.
So you've got you got your English literature and your American lit and your basic, and so they're all talking. Teacher goes into the room. How much freedom does that individual teacher have to go, you know what, today we're going to talk about something I saw on television last night.
Yep.
Today I'm going to teach you how to, there's a thing I saw on YouTube that shows you what they're doing with math now. Or SpaceX launched a rocket yesterday. Let's talk about the math behind it, or let's talk about the politics behind it, or whatever the class is. How much can they just go, today we're doing something different?
Teacher autonomy is a must when it comes into the classroom, from the stand of, if anybody has taught before, it's an art form. And if you are going to keep teachers or students engaged, you need some level of autonomy to be able to do that. Now, where the coherence comes in, and I'll give you an example. Let's say we're talking about our science department, right? And there's a skill that we all identify as something that students know and need able to do. Let's say it's claim evidence reasoning. This is a science skill. You could take a plethora of different, data sets or information and apply that to that skill. As a teacher, I can still have my autonomy, right, in some sense, to do some of the things that you just talked about. But we've all committed, we've all identified this is a skill that as a student comes through our system, we're going to ensure that we don't just teach it once. We teach it, we revisit it, we reteach it. If you didn't get it, right, through our evidence gathering techniques, we're going to make sure that you get it, because it's so important that throughout our system, you're going to get multiple opportunities to do that. And so those are the types of things that we as a system need to key in on and say, we're all in the boat, we're all rowing in the same direction to make sure that every student gets that opportunity.
Okay.
So, does that make sense?
Yeah. I know that a lot of parents, I talk to parents because they're wanting to know, what's going on at the school. And just a lot of friends that I have that have kids. And that sort of freedom to be a teacher, because we've all had good teachers and bad teachers throughout our lives. And I know a lot of us talk about the really good teachers we had, and a lot of them did things, I want to say, slightly unorthodox, and in a good way, that they were able to take things that we were talking about as kids and going, well, how does that work into this?
Right.
And sort of bring that in, rather than here's a skill that we have to learn. And I've been away from the school for so long that I don't know who are the good teachers and who are the ones that kids are talking about. And I'm sure that they are there.
We have amazing teachers in the Lodi School District.
And like I said, I'm sure that they're there. But it's, parents want to know, is this teacher inspiring? I guess is the word. Not just teaching, but inspiring.
Yeah.
So we talked about, Jack Reinlund. And he was amazingly inspiring to so many kids. I only had a gym class. I never was on the wrestling team. I was like this big around. But I could watch and watch how kids that were outside the social groups and that were maybe struggling here and there, that would join the wrestling team, and he would somehow just shape them into a confident child.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of teachers that were there in the arts and in sciences and such that did that for somebody.
Mhm.
And I guess I'm rambling a bit here, but it's, to me, that's always been the great thing about the Lodi schools, and having seen some other school districts where they just are too constrained.
Well, I think one of the things that you're hitting on right now is probably more focused on the social emotional learning aspect and creating those strong connections, whether it be creating a classroom environment where you have the opportunity to spend time, right? That permission, because some teachers feel they almost need the permission to do that. I have so much content and I need to get through it, and I have to go bell to bell instruction. As soon as you get in, we're hitting the instruction, right? But as you're reflecting, I'm sure you're reflecting on those opportunities where you came into classrooms and it was really a interesting classroom environment where you had the opportunity to connect with peers and build strong relationships, and connect with that teacher and build strong relationships. And wow, does that create a lasting memory? And in education, and I can say this specifically about the Lodi School District, when I came in and in one of my first opportunities to connect with the district, they said, we're really taking opportunity to focus on social emotional learning, and not just saying this is something that, I get to it if you have time, but how do we actually build it into the school day where teachers are taking time to do things like have a community circle question, have community building opportunities, and there's a lot of value in that. And I can tell you from my dissertation research that I've done, where I looked at really high achieving schools who had high levels of poverty across the entire state. And although Lodi School District doesn't fall into one of those districts who has high level of poverty, we're about 16%. And for my dissertation research, it was really focused on schools that, were closer to like 70% of the school district. But what those really high achieving schools had with high growth for their students was a recognition that they spent time focused on community building structures every day. I mean, that's something they did. They saw the value of spending time to build those strong community connections, teacher to teacher, student to student. And I already know coming into Lodi, that's something that they've been focusing on. That was before my time here.
So you've talked about kind of what's going on. What do you see as the challenges? You haven't hit on any of those yet.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's
and I'm not saying things that are wrong, but just this is something that needs to be dealt with, or something we need to get over, or something it's a challenge.
Yeah, and I think that's probably something that, I'm going to struggle to use the word challenge because I always see them as opportunities. And I think that one, and you had alluded to it before, COVID, right? And our response to COVID, and that presents challenges, definite challenges, and short-term challenges, but long-term challenges as well. When COVID has passed and we're back in a traditional setting, thinking about students who maybe had access, but didn't have the type of access to online learning that we would have hoped, right? We're only able to engage at certain times. We think about what COVID does to our instructional minutes as far as in any instructional setting that we would be in, whether it be a traditional setting with safety precautions, a blended model, or a virtual model. And just the amount of content that some educators would have been able to get to. Right, that's something that we are going to have to be prepared to be responsive to when we have the ability to do that. And right now, even with what we learned from the spring to where we are here in the fall, we've made some adjustments and some adaptations that I think we're serving some of our vulnerable populations in the district in the virtual setting in a way that we weren't maybe able to in the spring because it hit so suddenly. We had some time to plan. But there's also, now we're in a couple weeks in, and we know that our attendance we've been impressed with our attendance that we've had for virtual instruction. I'm very, very surprised at the high level of attendance, but we also have identified some students who are struggling to engage. And if you think about that in the traditional school setting, we at least have them.
You've got them, yeah.
Right? We have them in the building. So the troubleshooting that, but right now I know our administrators and our teachers are actively problem solving around how do we bring them in? How do we engage them? And I'm not talking about, loads of students and, maybe a handful of students in each grade level, but that's really important that we don't just say, oh, well, most students are participating. We've got a handful, and it's okay. How do we continue to get them engaged? And how do we, if they are experiencing an obstacle to being able to engage, how do we work together to try to problem solve around that? So those are the things. Right now, when I think about the immediate in my first 2 months, 3 months now in the role, that's risen to the top. Now there are definitely some opportunities that I see for us when I think about long term as a district, and one of the values with my role, and again having served in it for a while, I've had the opportunity to visit other districts. I have peers who have been in my same role, colleagues that I get to connect with. We have a curriculum directors group from around the areas. And so I know things that we do in this district that they would love to have in their district, like our STEAM program, for example. STEAM.
Science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
Yes.
So it's a lot of, just because a lot of people don't necessarily know what that means.
Thank you so much. Sometimes the educational jargon, right? So there's been a commitment by this board, and wow, they've done a wonderful job of, again, not just making it something that get to it if you get to it, but building it into the school day for students, right? At every level, that STEAM education opportunity, which really focuses on those 21st century skills, right? They are creating, they're building, they're analyzing, they're going through the inquiry process, and there are districts that would love to have that in place. Now, on the flip side, I know there are some things that some other districts potentially have in place, right? That when you look at it, you're like, okay, how do we get that in place here in Lodi? And so I'll give you some examples. There are some districts that when you look at your course sequence, for example, at the middle school through the high school level, it's all building towards something. It's building towards potentially an opportunity for a student to earn an industry recognized certification. Okay, so they're going through their course sequence. Maybe it's in tech ed, for example, and through one of the courses, there's an industry recognized certification that I can earn while I'm in that course, and I can take out of high school right into the workforce. We talk about career, college, and life ready, right? Okay. So career ready, boom. An example would be, let's say, ServSafe, a ServSafe certification that if I wanted to go and work in the restaurant business, I could exit high school, I'd have that, and all of a sudden when I apply for a job and I'm going through the interview process, having that gives me a leg up.
Now, it's been a while since I've been involved with the schools. Do we still have like the wood shop and the metal shop and the?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
yeah, it's a great question, and we have a wonderful instructor for that, and so that's one example, right? And another example, in the Lodi School District, we do an amazing job of helping students have the opportunity. And this does not just specifically go for maybe students who fall in that advanced learner category, but a wide breadth of students have the opportunity to have access to advanced placement coursework. And that's something, even when I was in high school, something
didn't exist when I was in school.
And there are a variety of courses that are available, and the Lodi School District has been recognized for that, and it has been, a pace setter for that. And like I said, been recognized around the state for that. That's something that many districts would like to get in place and have in place. There's also opportunities, I think, in some other districts to really look at dual credit opportunities where you partner with an institute of higher education. Like in Oshkosh has a CAP program, for example. UW Whitewater has a PI program, so the Partners in Education program, where some of our local teachers can become adjunct professors for that university. The course that they teach here at Lodi High School that students funnel through, they automatically, by passing that course with that instructor, would receive college level, high school credit and college level credit. Now, the benefit of that is if you're a first generation college student, we know, research has shown that if you enter college already with credits in your pocket, right, you are much more likely to finish out that college program. It's an interesting, because you've already kind of been through the rigor of that course. You have some feel of what it is, and you're off to a good start, right? So analyzing our system, our sequence of courses, analyzing opportunities like that we can potentially get some of our instructors involved in. Those are the things those are the opportunities. I don't see them as challenges. I see those are the opportunities I really look forward to connecting with our educators on, and putting those in place for continuing to put things like that in place for Lodi School District students.
So we're going to wrap up here. Final question. If there's one thing you want to say to parents and community members about how we're teaching our kids, what is it?
I would just go back to, I talked a lot today. We got into an assessment conversation a little bit, right? We talked a little bit about that, and really assessment piece on what is evidence gathering in the classroom. That's the most valuable assessment that can be going on. We talked a little bit about various opportunities when it comes to things like dual credit opportunities, industry recognized certifications. We talked about aligning, right, vertical alignment for our curriculum, things like that. Probably the most important thing, though, that I touched on, and maybe we should have hit on it a little bit deeper, was building connections, teacher to teacher, student to student, social emotional learning. That is the heart and the foundation of what needs to happen in the classroom. And one thing I've been really impressed with is coming into this school district, that's something that they identified as something they had been working on and will continue to work on in the future. So that's what I want parents to hear. That's what I want students to hear. That building that classroom community and building connections with your teacher and other students is going to continue to be a priority.
Okay, so quick follow-up on that.
Yeah. How
do parents and community members help make that happen?
Ooh, that's a great question. And we didn't get deep into this, but if we talk about like what's my vision for education in the Lodi School District, I would say it's not really my vision. It's a vision that we all have to commit to and create together. So when I was interviewing for this job, one thing I appreciated was Mr. Breinig had highlighted his hope to take the community through a visioning process or a strategic planning process. And what I would say is how you kind of can help make that happen is get involved in that process. Because if we can identify through that process, form relationships together, build community connections, we can start to bridge that gap.
How do they get involved?
Yep. So that's the next piece. What I'm hoping, and it's hard right now, right, because of COVID and everything going on. But my hope would be to continue to build opportunities for community connections with the classroom at every level, right? In every grade level, at every school, where we would have community members, different business entities, et cetera, coming in and being able to connect with the classroom. And I know other districts who have been able to do that really successfully. I know we have that in some levels already going on with the district, and I'd like to continue to build on that. It may temporarily be a little bit on pause because of COVID. And to be honest, Rick, that's where our teachers' main focus is right now, is trying to be responsive as possible to that and put all their energy to whatever instructional model we're in, making that as best it can be. But that's one of the things that we'd like to build on towards the future.
Right.
So
thank you for
Thank you
stopping
so
in
much
today and talking with us. And thank you for watching, either live or later. Now, if you'd like, there's a little button over there that you can click to subscribe. You'll get notices in your email box or on your phone letting you know that we are live. And here somewhere, there's a little box that's got an intro to let you know what this is all about. All right. Thank you very much.